Have you ever lived through a moment when life itself seemed to answer you? Maybe you thought of someone, and just moments later, they appeared with an unexpected message. Or perhaps, in the middle of a silent doubt, you stumbled upon a line in a forgotten book, exactly the words you needed to hear. These experiences are not just trivial coincidences. They carry the unmistakable sense that there is an invisible order at work, a secret dialogue between the soul and the universe. Carl Gustav Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, when an inner event, a thought, a dream, an emotion, coincides with an external event in a way so meaningful that it cannot be reduced to mere chance. For Jung, such moments revealed that psyche and world are not separate, but two reflections of the same wholeness. Imagine life as a vast lake. Our thoughts and emotions are like stones tossed into the water, sending out ripples that intersect with waves from other directions. At certain moments, these waves meet and form a unique pattern, as if the lake itself was showing us a message. Synchronicity is this meeting point, where inner and outer converge, inviting us to awaken. This script is a dive into that mystery. We'll explore Jung's own experiences, the stories of his patients, echoes of ancient myths, and even our modern daily lives, where synchronicity continues to visit us. With each chapter, we'll draw closer to a deeper understanding, not just of the concept, but of the lived experience. If this theme resonates with you, allow yourself to listen, not only with the mind, but with the heart. Because perhaps along this journey, the universe itself will send you a sign. Chapter 1. Carl Jung and the Awakening of Synchronicity. Jung's journey towards synchronicity began long before he gave it a name. From childhood, he lived with omens, enigmatic dreams, and phenomena that seemed to defy the laws of time and space. At the age of 12, for example, he had an intense dream. Beneath the altar of his church, he saw a massive underground figure, part divine, part monstrous. This was not just a child's imagination, it was a calling. Many years later, Jung himself would say that it was in that instant his consciousness first awakened to the mystery of the unconscious. Later, on the eve of World War I, Jung was struck by a sequence of unsettling visions. He saw rivers of blood spreading across Europe, cities in ruins, the suffering of thousands. For weeks, he believed he was losing his sanity. But when war broke out in 1914, he realized those images were not symptoms of illness, but messages rising from a deeper layer of the psyche, what he would call the collective unconscious. These experiences marked Jung profoundly. Instead of rejecting them, he embraced them as clues to a greater reality, a layer where the individual and the collective, the psychic and the material, meet. It was as if his soul were a seismograph, registering tremors before they manifested in the external world. Beyond his visions, Jung also witnessed seemingly impossible phenomena. In his own home, he heard unexplained crashes, saw furniture split without reason, and even predicted sounds that occurred in front of Freud, leaving the Viennese master unsettled. For Jung, these were not mere curiosities, but indications that the external world could mysteriously intertwine with the human psyche. We might say Jung was initiated into synchronicity by life itself. It did not come to him as an academic concept, but as lived experience, often disturbing, always profound. The universe seemed to speak to him in symbols and coincidences, guiding him into territories psychology at the time avoided. Thus, Jung's awakening was also an invitation to recognize that our strangest, most inexplicable experiences are not meaningless noise, but perhaps the very language of the invisible reaching out to communicate with us. Chapter 2. What is synchronicity? Jung defined synchronicity as the meaningful coincidence between an inner event, a thought, a dream, an emotion, and an external event that occurs simultaneously without causal connection. To picture it, he invites us to imagine two parallel lines, one representing the psyche, the other the physical world. On certain occasions, those lines intersect at a luminous point, a coincidence infused with meaning. One of his most famous accounts happened in his consulting room. A highly rational patient resisted symbolic interpretations of her dreams. One morning, she described a dream of a golden scarab, an ancient Egyptian symbol of transformation and rebirth. As she spoke, a tapping came at the window. Jung opened it and found an unusual beetle of golden color which flew into the room. When he presented it to her, she was shaken. Life had materialized right before her, the very symbol that had arisen in her unconscious. That moment broke through her resistance, allowing the therapeutic process to move forward. Here lies the essence of synchronicity. It is not mere chance. Chance is empty, cold, indifferent. Synchronicity, by contrast, carries meaning. It is as though the universe becomes the soul's accomplice, answering its hidden calls with symbols. To deepen our grasp, we can look to myths. Think of Icarus, who flies too high and falls, or Hercules, who undergoes trials that mirror his inner struggles. These heroes do not live random stories. Their journeys are marked by encounters and coincidences that reveal hidden meaning. Myth, like synchronicity, shows that life is guided by a symbolic order. We experience this in modern daily life too. Someone reflecting on changing careers might that same day meet a person who shares an inspiring story of transition. Someone feeling lonely dreams of flowing water, and upon waking receives a long-awaited message from a distant friend. These are small points of light, reminding us that we are not alone on our path. For Jung, such experiences are precious, because they show us that the psyche is not an isolated island. It dialogues with the world, mirrors itself in it. Synchronicity is the confirmation that inner and outer are not two separate realms, but facets of the same totality. Chapter 3. The dialogue between science and mystery. In Jung's time, science was seeking solid certainties, fixed laws, and linear explanations. The world was seen as a machine where every effect had a precise cause. But Jung perceived that life could not be reduced to mechanical gears. The human soul, with its dreams, symbols, and intuitions, seemed to defy that rigid model. It was precisely this willingness to look beyond logic that created tension in his relationship with Freud. Freud believed everything could be explained by repressed memories and unconscious personal desires. Jung, however, dared to go further. He intuited that there was a deeper layer, one that did not belong solely to the individual, but to humanity as a whole, the collective unconscious. One episode illustrates this difference. During an intense conversation about psychic phenomena, Jung felt a strange pressure in his body, as if an energy were about to erupt. He warned Freud that something was about to happen. Moments later, a loud crack sounded from a nearby bookcase, startling them both. Freud dismissed it as nonsense, but Jung insisted it's going to happen again. And indeed, the sound repeated. For Freud, it was mere coincidence. For Jung, it was a glimpse that reality was far more mysterious than we assume. Decades later, discoveries in quantum physics would bring surprising metaphors that echoed these intuitions. The double-slit experiment showed that particles of light behave differently when observed. The simple act of looking alters reality. Consciousness, in some way, participates in the fabric of the world. Jung was not trying to turn psychology into physics, but he recognized the symbolic resonance between these fields. If, at the subatomic level, consciousness seems to influence matter, could it not also be possible that, in our daily lives, our inner states shape meaningful coincidences? Here is where the dialogue between science and mystery is born. Science asks how things happen. Synchronicity asks why they happen. A lightning bolt can be explained by electricity, but its appearance during a moment of existential crisis can be experienced as a sign. Jung invites us to integrate both perspectives. Science gives us clarity, but mystery gives us depth. Together, they remind us that we live in a universe not only made of atoms, but also of symbols. And sometimes, it is within this invisible space that life answers us. Chapter 4. Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. To understand synchronicity, we need to dive into the heart of Jungian psychology. Archetypes. He described archetypes as primordial images, invisible structures that shape not only dreams and myths, but also behaviors and even the events of our lives. We are not born as a blank slate. We carry within us ancestral symbols that belong not only to our personal history, but to the history of all humanity. This is what Jung called the collective unconscious. Imagine the collective unconscious as a vast underground ocean. Each human being is like a visible island, but all the islands are connected by the same deep waters. There swim the eternal images, the hero, the mother, the sage, the shadow, the divine child. These symbolic forces touch us silently, influencing our choices, our fears, and even our passions. When it comes to synchronicity, archetypes play an essential role. They act like bridges, connecting the inner world to the outer world. The case of the golden scarab illustrates this perfectly. The beetle was not just an insect, but the embodiment of a transformational archetype already moving within the patient's unconscious. Life, in that instant, materialized an archetypal symbol. Ancient myths confirm this symbolic logic. Think of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess who descends into the underworld to reclaim her wholeness, or Hercules, who faces 12 labors, each one representing inner trials. These narratives reveal the same archetypal structure that still manifests today in our dreams and coincidences. In modern life, this also shows itself. A young man feeling lost may stumble upon a film or conversation that awakens the archetype of the inner hero. A grieving woman may repeatedly dream of rivers and during that same period be invited on a trip to a lakeshore, finding there a symbolic space for healing. Thus, the collective unconscious is not just a distant theory, but the living source that organizes meaningful coincidences. Synchronicity is, in a sense, the way archetypes cross the invisible veil, aligning psyche and world into a single symbolic dance. So I ask you, what synchronicities have marked your life? What signs has the universe already sent you, inviting you to change course or trust the invisible? Share your story in the comments. Your experience may be the light someone else needs today. Chapter 5. Archetypes and their hidden meanings. If the collective unconscious is a vast ocean, archetypes are the invisible currents that move its waters. They shape our dreams, our passions, our falls and rebirths. To know them is like shining a lantern into inner caves. Each archetype reveals something essential about life and about ourselves. The persona. This is the mask we wear on the stage of society. It allows us to play roles, the competent professional, the loyal friend, the dutiful child. But when we believe we are only this mask, we drift away from the true self. Many synchronicities occur when the persona cracks, an unexpected encounter exposing our vulnerability, an event reminding us we are more than what we show the world. The shadow represents what we hide from ourselves, fears, repressed desires, unlived potentials. The shadow can appear in dreams as threatening figures or in encounters with people who provoke disproportionate irritation. Life often places us in synchronicities that reveal our shadow, repeated situations, uncomfortable coincidences, signs urging us to integrate what we deny. Anima and animus, archetypes of the feminine in a man's soul, anima, and the masculine in a woman's soul, animus. They emerge in sudden passions, encounters that feel predestined, but also in painful disappointments that force us inward. A synchronicity in love, like meeting someone who seems to mirror our being, is often the manifestation of these archetypes, asking for inner integration. The hero. This archetype calls us to the journey. Hercules in his labors, or even Icarus in his fall, represent the soul's impulse to go beyond limits. When we move through crises, and during that time receive signs that encourage us, a song playing at the right moment, a stranger's words rekindling our strength, it is the hero manifesting through synchronicity. The great mother, source of nourishment and care, but also of destruction and return to the unconscious. She may appear as Mary, Isis, Gaia, but also as the earth that consumes in order to regenerate. Her synchronicities reveal themselves in cycles of loss and rebirth, the death of something making room for new growth. The self, the center, the wholeness, the archetype of integration. It manifests in mandalas, flowers, golden castles, images of unity. When life offers us a coincidence so profound that we feel we are facing a greater destiny, it is the self touching us, guiding us toward individuation. Archetypes are like keys that help us decipher the universe's secret language. Synchronicity, when seen in their light, ceases to be mere chance and reveals itself as a mirror, the outer world reflecting the invisible movements of the soul. Chapter 6. The Bridge Between East and West. Jung always sought to understand what unites opposites. For him, the psyche was composed of polarities, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, reason and emotion. Individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, demanded the reconciliation of these seemingly opposing forces. It is no surprise, then, that Jung found profound inspiration in Eastern spiritual traditions, especially Taoism and the I Ching, the ancient Book of Changes. A decisive encounter took place in 1928, when Jung received from Richard Wilhelm the translation of an old Chinese treatise, The Secret of the Golden Flower. This text described meditative practices aimed at uniting the opposites within the psyche, represented by the image of the mandala and the golden flower blooming at the center of the soul. When Jung read it, he was struck by the similarities between these Eastern practices and the images that had been spontaneously emerging in his own mandala drawings recorded in the Red Book. For him, this was not mere cultural coincidence, but the universal expression of archetypes that traverse all human traditions. In Taoism, there is the notion of the Tao, the invisible force that sustains all things, the natural way that flows effortlessly. Yin and Yang symbolize the dance of opposites, light and darkness, masculine and feminine, action and stillness. For Jung, this vision resonated deeply with the Western search for the integration of opposites and the wholeness of the self. From these influences, Jung developed the idea of unus mundus, the one world. This refers to an underlying reality where psyche and matter are not separate, but different expressions of the same unity. It is in this terrain of the unus mundus that synchronicity manifests, when the inner and outer worlds reveal their essential interconnectedness. Thus, Jung built a bridge between East and West. On one side, the scientific and rational tradition that shaped European thought. On the other, the symbolic and intuitive wisdom of Eastern philosophies. By bringing them together, he opened the way for a psychology not limited to healing illness, but guiding the human being toward meaning, wholeness, and harmony with the cosmos. In this context, synchronicity is like a breath of the Tao in our lives. When we pay attention, we realize that what we call chance may, in fact, be life gently leading us toward our center, like the golden flower blooming quietly at the heart of the mandala. Chapter 7. When the Universe Responds, How to Recognize the Signs. If synchronicity is the symbolic language of the universe, how can we learn to recognize it? This question is essential because so often we are caught in routine, tangled in excessive thoughts and worries, that we fail to notice the subtle invitations life offers us. Jung taught that synchronicity cannot be forced. It does not appear when we try to prove it, but when we are open and receptive. It is like listening to soft music. We can only hear it if we quiet the inner noise. There are different ways synchronicity may manifest. Alert synchronicity. Signs that precede important or challenging events. They often appear in dreams or through small repetitive incidents. They prepare us as if the unconscious were whispering, "Pay attention." Confirming synchronicity. They occur when we need reassurance that we are on the right path. It may be a phrase overheard by chance, a symbol that repeatedly appears, or an unexpected meeting that brings clarity. Opportunity synchronicity, when life seems to align circumstances so that a new path opens. Here we notice the combination of inner preparation with the right occasion in the outer world. Manifestation. Synchronicity, when a deep desire, whether conscious or not, takes shape in reality. It is as if what we had been cultivating in thought or emotion materializes before our eyes. To perceive these signs, we must cultivate certain habits, mindful attention, observe not only external events, but also your dreams, feelings, and intuitions. Synchronicity journal, record striking coincidences, and reflect on what they may be revealing. Inner listening. Ask not only what happened, but also, what does this mean for me right now? When we live with such presence and openness, life reveals itself as symbolic fabric. Nothing is merely random. Every encounter, every word, every image can carry a message from the soul. Jung reminds us that synchronicity is more than coincidence. It is a dance between the visible and the invisible. Recognizing the signs is, in truth, recognizing yourself, because the universe responds, but always in resonance with what is already pulsing within. Chapter 8. The Circle of Life and the Inner Mandala. In Jung's vision, life is not a straight line. We do not simply move from birth to death in a linear, predictable path. The soul moves in circles, in spirals, always returning to itself in search of deeper meaning. This circular movement is represented by the symbol of the mandala, which Jung studied intensely in his own inner processes. For him, the mandala was not just a geometric figure or spiritual ornament. It was the expression of the self, the center of personality, what we are in essence, beyond the ego. When someone draws or dreams of mandalas, they are not creating mere aesthetic patterns. They are often unknowingly giving form to the map of their own individuation, the process of becoming whole. The mandala shows the central point, the nucleus of balance, and the paths circling around it. Synchronicity in this context can be seen as the way life helps us find that center. Every meaningful coincidence is like an invisible line guiding us back to our core. Jung also related the mandala to the ancient wisdom of alchemy. The alchemists sought the conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites, symbolized by the sacred marriage of sun and moon, masculine and feminine, spirit and matter. For them, this union generated the philosopher's stone, the symbol of totality. In Jungian psychology, this same union happens within the soul. Synchronicity is a way of perceiving that in special moments, the universe conspires to bring our inner opposites together, restoring balance between reason and intuition, light and shadow, ego and self. Thus, each synchronicity is like a piece fitting into the larger mosaic of the inner mandala. Over the course of life, we collect these signs, and gradually we see that they form a greater pattern. Chance reveals order. Chaos reveals path. The mandala, then, is not only in images or dreams, it is life itself in its circularity. Recognizing synchronicity is also recognizing that our journey is a sacred circle. and that every turn brings us closer to who we truly are. Conclusion: the dance between soul and cosmos. Jung often said, "The world hangs by a thread, and that thread is the psyche of man." For him, the greatest threat to humanity did not come from external forces, but from our ignorance of ourselves. It is in our blindness to the soul that dangers, wars, and imbalances are born. Synchronicity invites us to look again at this forgotten dimension. It shows us that we are not isolated in an indifferent universe, but deeply interwoven with it. Every meaningful coincidence is like a whisper from the cosmos, reminding us that life is woven with meaning, and that our individual journey participates in a far greater dance. In Taoism, this dance is called harmony. In alchemy, it is the conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites. In Christianity, it is the image of the inner Christ. For Jung, it is the path of individuation, different names for the same reality, the meeting of the human being with their wholeness reflected in the universe. When we learn to recognize the signs, we begin to live differently. Chance ceases to be mere accident. Difficulties cease to be only obstacles. Everything transforms into part of a silent dialogue between soul and world. And as this dialogue deepens, a gentle trust emerges, the trust that we are not alone, and that life, in its essence, is a great mandala in motion. So if you have already lived moments when the universe seemed to respond, treasure them as sacred seeds. They point beyond ordinary logic, an invitation to trust life and yourself more deeply. If this video brought meaning to you, remember to like, subscribe, and share it with someone else who is also seeking to understand the signs of the invisible. Because, in the end, synchronicity is exactly this, the reminder that life speaks to us, not in words, but in symbols, coincidences, and encounters that guide us back to the very heart of existence.